Today I'm going to break this video up from my different format. Instead of looking at my smiling face, I've been working on some things that go with Ezekiel. And sometimes the timelines get confused, and sometimes we don't understand how the whole thing fits together. And very often when we are doing our studies, we kind of tend to think that Jeremiah finished, and then Ezekiel went, and then with Daniel, kind of like a book. But what happens is we see that actually these prophets lived at about the same time. And I'm going to talk about some of this. These characters over here, these kings, based upon the years and different things and how all of this fits together. So going from the top, we're looking at all of the kings. And I wrote down what year, and you may have to zoom in on some of this, but what year they were, what age they were when they started reigning. Like Josiah was 8, Jehoahaz was 23, Jehoiakim was 25, Jehoiachin was 18, Zedekiah was 21. Just gives you an idea of how old they were when they started. Then we have how many years they reigned. 31 years. Now Jehoahaz was only 3 months. And then we had 11 years for Jehoiakim. Jehoiachin was only 8 years. Then he went into captivity till the time after Nebuchadnezzar. Then we have Zedekiah for 11 years, and then the fall of Jerusalem came. And so we see that. Now we have the 70 years of captivity, and then we have the reign of Darius and Cyrus, the Medo-Persians, and then we had Zerubbabel. If you remember Zerubbabel from Ezra, where he goes in with the captives to go back and set up the temple. So we see how this goes together. Let's look at these kings real quick, and then we'll look at Jeremiah, Daniel, and Ezekiel. Nebuchadnezzar came into his kingdom, where he was the king, right before Jehoiakim. So he comes in, and then Jehoiakim, and he is there right before Jehoiakim comes in, a couple of years before Jehoiakim. And you'll see that Daniel also comes in right here. It says in the 3rd year of Jehoiakim. Now that's in Daniel 1. It says when Daniel and his friends and the captives went in, there were several times captives were taken from Nebuchadnezzar. He didn't just take one group. He took several groups at a time. So here we have Daniel taken in the 3rd year of Jehoiakim's reign. Now Nebuchadnezzar came in like a year before or so in that same time period. So right before Jehoiakim, right near the end of Josiah actually, and this is deceptive. And we have 3 months looks the same as 31 years. I have another chart to show you how that looks on another graph. But basically, that's a small amount. This would be a longer amount. I'll show you on another chart. So we have Nebuchadnezzar is there, and he goes all the way through the fall, and about 20 years, about 22 years after. Then Evil Merodach comes in for only 2 years, and then we have Belshazzar ends it out, and then the book of Daniel talks about the fall of Belshazzar, and then the coming of Cyrus and Darius, who are the Medo-Persians, and David even interacts with them for a year. Or Daniel, I should say. Sorry, Daniel, not David, Daniel. But let's look at these prophets. You have Nebuchadnezzar starts here, but Jeremiah is in the last year. Josiah went for 31 years in the 30th year of the reign of Josiah. And that's important. That's mentioned in Jeremiah. Jeremiah's dad was Hilkiah, and Hilkiah was known all the way back to with Hezekiah. Remember when Hezekiah was taken the word of the Lord, and Hilkiah finds it, gives it to Hezekiah, who reads it, and they start, And then also with Josiah, Hilkiah was the main priest there, and of Hezekiah, and through Manasseh, Amnon, and then Josiah. And then here we have Jeremiah is born or starts his ministry, and he's a young man here. We don't think he's a toddler. We don't know how old he was. But he even talks about his youth, about I'm not old enough to be doing this. So I'm thinking he had to be at least over 10 or 11, to be able to cognate, what he's going to have. And for men to listen to him, but that's speculation on my part. I did not look up a lot of the history on these men, so if you wanted to look that up on your own, but I dealt only with information given me from the Word. So Jeremiah starts to reign. Starts to be prophet here at the end of Josiah, through the 3 months of Jehoahaz, and on through Jehoiakim, Jehoiachin, and through Zedekiah. And like I've said in other videos, we believe that he died right after the fall of Jerusalem. That Nebuchadnezzar had taken out all the main people, but he left the poorest of the poor to till the ground and work on the vineyards and things. And Jeremiah chose to stay with them. He had the option. The chief prince that Nebuchadnezzar left in charge, who was a Chaldean, gave him a choice. He could either go with them into Babylon or he could stay. He stayed with the governor there. Then there was some intrigue that happened, and then he was rescued. But the Jews then wanted to go down and live in Egypt. God was telling them no, and it's believed that this time is when Jeremiah was stoned to death right after the fall of Jerusalem. So that's Jeremiah. We see Daniel here. He comes in the 3rd year of Jehoiakim. So Jehoiakim is here, and then in the 3rd year of his reign comes Daniel, and we don't know how old he is. We know that here he is taken captive with Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And then they're, of course, made into eunuchs, and they start serving the king. And then we have him going all the way, it's 27 years to the fall of Jerusalem. He's in the court. And then you have another 70 years he goes through. And then he talks about seeing images on Daniel 9 through 12 in the 1st year of Darius. So we have a record of him existing through the 1st year of Darius. Now this is a long time. If you add this year plus this year, which would be 71, to this, 81 and 21 and 71, you've got about 100 years. And it's very possible that he was over, 12 or 13. He went and spoke to the king in Daniel chapter 2. So he would have had to be an older boy, maybe even a teenager, to speak with the king, because that's in Daniel chapter 2 is when he had a vision, a dream, and he couldn't tell what it was, and he wanted someone to tell him the dream and the interpretation of the dream, if you remember that story. And Daniel's the one that went through from God and gave him that. But he could have been anywhere from like 10 to 15, I'm thinking. Subtract a year or two, add a decade for him to grow up. He could have been born here, and we don't know. And then he would have died maybe of old age somewhere around here. So can a man live 110, 112 years? Yes. We look at Ezekiel. Now, I didn't get Ezekiel's life. I'm sure it's probably written in a history somewhere, but I'm just going with information from the Bible alone. I did kind of look up a couple of things, but basically the Bible alone. We have Ezekiel starts writing in the 5th year of Jehoiakim's captivity. That's what this is right here. Jehoiachin, I get those two mixed up. Jehoiachin started. 8 years later, he goes into captivity for 37 years. For 11 years, he's in captivity before the fall, and 26 years after the fall. And then Evil Merodach, it's recorded at the end of Jeremiah, lets him out. We don't know what happened to him after that. If I wanted to look it up in Josephus or other historical texts, but I'm dealing with just information that's given me in the Bible. So in the 5th year of his captivity is when Ezekiel started having his wheel in the wheel and starting seeing all these angels and things. And he has visions in the 5th year, in the 6th year, in the 7th year, the 8th year, the 10th year, and the 20th year. He has these visions. And then if he was in the 5th year when he came into when he got his first vision, that would have been 6 years before, because remember this is 11 years here before the fall of Jerusalem, because we know Zedekiah only reigned for 11 years. So that's 6 more years. And then if we went to the 20th year, that would have been 9 years after. So this is a 15-year where he got all of those visions between the 5th year of Jehoiachin's captivity to the 20th year of Jehoiachin's captivity. So all of that to say, to give perspective, because we can't see it of, Jeremiah, then Ezekiel, then Daniel. When actually we have Jeremiah here, and we have Daniel existing at the same time. Then we have Ezekiel is kind of here in the middle. And what's interesting to me, I was thinking about this with Daniel, is as big a man as Daniel was, you know, we all wait for the Lord to use us, but basically, the chapter 1 is him coming into, he doesn't do much. He's just in there, but he doesn't eat the meat from the king's table. We'll get to this later. Chapter 2, he talks with the king about the vision. Chapters 3 and 4 of Daniel are just Nebuchadnezzar. We don't know where he did that, but Nebuchadnezzar somewhere in here did chapters 3 and 4. Chapters 5 and 6 finish the history. This is right at the fall. It should be closer. It should be right there on the line of the 70th year. In fact, the day before the Medes and Persians came in would be chapter 5. Chapter 6 is the lion's den under Darius, oddly enough. Then we have chapters 9 through 12 are here in the first year of Darius. So all of that's there. So we see historically you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Then with prophecies you have 7, 8, 9 through 12. So the history goes from 1 to 6. The prophecy goes from 7 through 12. The whole point of this is to see how all of this fits together. Now let me move this over real quick. Move my chart over. Hopefully this works. Nope. This one I created. Let me go take it a little bit farther this way. Okay. I created this one. I'm going to take it a little farther. Sorry, guys. Well, that's going to be more of a problem. I'll see if I can fix that with this. All right, that works too. And you might have to zoom in. I may zoom this video in a little. But here I'm giving you a little more perspective. Each line on here is 5 years. So if you're looking at, I didn't get all of Hezekiah. I just put him in there, and Isaiah was killed right about the first in the reign of Manasseh. This is according to history. This is how far it was from Isaiah to Jeremiah. I should have probably put him down here. But look at that, 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, about 40 years, 4 decades there. But then again, so we have Jeremiah. We have Daniel starting here right after Jeremiah. And then we have Ezekiel here right near the end of Jeremiah. Here, again, all of these are, here's 70 years put out. So you can see that more of a chart. Puts things more in perspective. Here's about 11 years, give or take. 8 years, give or take. Another 11 years. 3 months should have been even closer in, but okay. 31 years represented here. Amnon was basically just a couple of years. And then Manasseh here, a little over 10 years. It's just throwing this up there so you can see some perspective also on the time. So I wanted to do these 2 charts. I think they're very helpful. I think they show perspective. I think they show balance. I think they show where everything fits in together. So we see again how it isn't Jeremiah, then Ezekiel, then Daniel, but it's Jeremiah, Daniel at about the same time, and then here's Ezekiel thrown in. And these men were all separated. He's down by the river Chibar. He's up at the palace, and he's in Jerusalem. So different places, but these are how the prophets are lining up. Here's how the kings lined up and how it all worked out. So take a look at these charts. They're going to be very interesting. As we go into Ezekiel, you can see how all this puts together and how that all fits into one grand idea. Thank you.